Good morning. This is big, wow. Maybe this is not the right time to start developing stage fright, but cool. So thank you all for coming here today. I'm going to talk about disruption, about our plans for what's next for the cybersecurity industry. And you know, 11 and a half years ago, in December 2005, I woke up one Monday and I drove up my car to, I think it was San Mateo, to Greylock Partners. And I stood in front of, I don't know, maybe 10 people, 10 venture partners in that firm and told them how I'm going to disrupt the network security industry. And I think the week later, I drove up to Sequoia, or actually it was west of where I used to live. And same thing, presented to the venture firm there how I'm going to disrupt the network security industry, how I'm going to take on Cisco and Check Point and Juniper and completely change the industry. And I've been talking about that with other people during that time, most of which were people that I was trying to hire. And usually the response was, you and what army, right? Like, how are you going to do that? Luckily, Sequoia and Greylock saw the vision and decided to invest in Palo Alto Networks. And the result, as we know today, is that we disrupted the network security market. And the proof of that is that now we are, by far, the largest network security vendor in the world by total sales. So it's very clear that it disrupted the market. And this morning, when I woke up, I had a similar feeling to the feeling I had in those Mondays 11 and a half years ago. And the reason for that is that today, for the first time, I'm going to share with the world, outside of a small group inside Palo Alto Networks, our plans to disrupt the cybersecurity industry. This is not the network security industry. This is now the entire cybersecurity industry. We're going to change it completely, and we're going to make sure that no stone remains unturned. And the same way that in the network security industry, the vendor landscape today looks very different than it was 10 years ago. Essentially, you have Palo Alto Networks. One of the vendors disappeared. The other two vendors are struggling to keep their customer base by offering 95% discounts on their products. The same thing is going to happen to the entire cybersecurity industry. And 10 years from now, because of what you're going to hear here today, the vendor landscape is going to be totally different than what you see here today. And the interesting thing about disruption is that the way you disrupt the market is not that you come up with a great idea and then you say, this idea is going to disrupt the market. Usually, interestingly, it's the other way around, meaning first you say, I'm going to disrupt the market, and then you say, how am I going to do that? And it happened in other markets as well, right? If you look at the taxi and limo industry, that market was disrupted by Uber. And it's not that Uber came up with a great idea that accidentally disrupted the market. They were going to disrupt the market, and they came up with the idea of how to do it. And the same is true for Tesla in the car industry, and the same is true for Airbnb in the accommodation industry, and so on and so forth. So the first thing I want to do today is I want to walk you through the reasons why we believe that the cybersecurity industry is ready for disruption. And then we'll talk about what a disruption is. Remember, first you figure out that the industry is ready for disruption, then you disrupt it. It's not the other way around. Then you figure out how to disrupt it. It's not the other way around. So let me walk you through my thought process of why I believe that the cybersecurity industry is ready for disruption. And I think that part of it is that we're getting to a point where it's just becoming very, very clear that we cannot keep going the current route we're on in terms of investment in the industry. If you look at investment or spend, what vendors have been spending on R&D and what VCs have been spending on startups and what larger companies have been spending on M&A, on acquiring other vendors, and you look what happened over time. So let's take the 10 years between 1995 and 2005. I remember when I started in this industry, in late 94, early 95, there were maybe 20 vendors in the space, probably less than 20. And the investment levels during that decade were in the billions. So if you sum up all the vendors that were active between 1995 and 2005, acquisitions, R&D spend, VC investment, probably a few billions. The result is technology focused mostly on detecting and stopping known attacks, right? The firewall and the IPS and anti-malware and antivirus and proxies and URL filters and so on, focused on stopping known attacks, which let's say is about 90% of the attacks today. So, during that decade, we spent billions of dollars on developing technology that can stop about 90% of attacks today. The next decade, the one from 2005 to 2015, the focus has been more and more on targeted attacks, on unknown attacks, on stopping things that have never been seen before. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of cybersecurity vendors with spend of tens of billions of dollars. If you sum up acquisitions, VC spend, and R&D spend, you get to tens of billions of dollars, and the result was another 9. We can probably say today that the technology that was developed during that decade, combined with the technology that was developed in the previous decade, can stop about 99%, at least detect, if you use automation like we offer, stop, prevent 99% of attacks today. And in the decade we're in right now, the one that started about a year ago and is going to continue for another almost 9 years, we're going to focus on the next 9, right? Our goal is to get now to 99.9%. And the question is, what's going to happen to the spend? We're already seeing bigger and bigger spend. We're seeing every other week, I read about another security startup that has raised hundreds of millions of dollars with valuations in the billions, startups that probably aren't going to be successful enough to justify the investment. And in any case, it doesn't make sense that we're going to have to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in thousands of vendors and that you'll be able to actually consume that. Something has to change. We are on the wrong trajectory, okay? We cannot keep the investment. We cannot deal with thousands of cybersecurity vendors. And therefore, the industry is probably ready for a big change, for disruption. Now, you probably say, hey, I don't care. I don't care if VCs spend hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't care if thousands of entrepreneurs waste 10 years of their lives, chasing a rabbit down a hole that doesn't lead anywhere by building companies that aren't going to go anywhere. I'm kind of with you, especially on the VC side. I don't like to see entrepreneurs waste their time and talent, but this also has implications to you as consumers of cybersecurity technology. It's becoming very, very, very difficult to consume cybersecurity technology. And to illustrate why, maybe we'll start with a short video that shows you the first reason why it's becoming harder and harder to consume cybersecurity technology. So if we can bring up the first video.
So you're telling me this device will make us secure?
Yes, it's cutting edge, very secure.
Totally secure.
Well, I have to say, this is quite an investment. But I know security is a top priority for the company, and I want it done correctly. Okay, put in the order. I want this installed right away.
Okay, ready?
This is a big day. Derek's even doing his happy dance.
Let's get this fired up.
What do you mean? It's online already. We got it configured this morning.
Oh,
What's wrong?
this does not look good.
Derek, stop dancing.
Are you telling me the new hardware didn't make us more secure?
Well, more secure.
Totally secure.
Then why are you asking me for more money?
The new hardware, it's awesome.
We love it.
Yeah, but to unlock the full potential of the new hardware, we need to get this other device to bring it all up to the next level.
Just to be clear, you need another piece of hardware to make the new hardware work properly?
To unlock its potential.
Wait, how much money?
To like the next level. It's like, whoa.
What the?
We need this.
Look, with thousands of cybersecurity vendors out there and so much technology, it's becoming really, really difficult to tell what's going to work and what's not going to work for you. See, evaluating a firewall is easy. You put it in a POC, you put it in a lab, you put it on one internet connection, you try to block port 81, it works. You allow port 80 to go through, it works. Logging works, network address translation works, app ID works. It's easy to test it, it's easy to know that it's going to work for you. As you start getting further and further away from the firewall, the IPS and antivirus, and then you start looking at technology for detecting unknown attacks, sandboxing, machine learning-based technology, and other things that we're going to talk about today, it's becoming very difficult to tell whether something is going to work for you or not. You can put it in a POC, in a lab, maybe on one or two live internet links. It's not going to tell you whether that technology works for you or not. And I'm sure it happened to you, at least to some of you, that you thought that something works because it worked in the lab, and then you deployed it, and then you found out that, yeah, it doesn't really work well in your infrastructure. And of course, the solution is, let's buy something else that's going to sit on top of it, maybe some SIEM or some module that's going to take the events coming out of this technology and process the events and tell us what we really need to focus on. And you buy that, and it doesn't work that well, and then you buy another set of technologies and another set of technologies, and very soon you end up with dozens of different security technologies deployed in your infrastructure. And this is just going to get worse. With the number of vendors out there and the number of technologies out there and the number of good ideas out there, it's getting worse and worse and worse. That's another reason why the industry is ready for disruption. It cannot continue like that. We cannot continue on spending hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars buying technology and deploying technology and then finding out that the value that we get out of the technology is at best limited. Sometimes we have a good hit. I mean, sometimes we pick up the right technology. It's completely random. It cannot continue like that, okay? There are other issues. Maybe we can bring up the next movie and see what other issues we have that make the industry ready for disruption.
Okay, we're getting word that this wanna laugh malware thing is spreading, so we're gonna need to make sure our systems are protected against it. So run whatever updates are needed.
You got it, boss. We'll have it ready to go on patch day.
Okay, good to hear. Wait, when is patch day?
Tuesdays, as always.
Taco Tuesdays.
But today is Wednesday.
Yeah, I know, but it's best to do it on patch day. That way we avoid any problems.
But if the system gets infected while you wait, won't that present a bigger problem?
Yeah, but if we do the patch tomorrow, it'll throw off all our maintenance work.
Important work.
Maybe if we can...
Okay, if the system gets infected, won't fixing it afterward throw off your work as well?
Yeah, but...
It's a chicken and an egg thing, really.
Chicken and egg. Brilliant.
So here's a dirty secret that the industry doesn't tell you. When you buy a new security technology and deploy it on premise, I'm not talking about the firewall and the IPS, I'm talking about the sophisticated stuff. When you buy it, you deploy it on premise, it's like a used car. So it's like a new car, it's like buying a new car. It loses value every day, very, very rapidly. And the reason is that the bad guys are very, very smart. They're very innovative. And they're finding ways around security technology. We see at least once a week a new technique that's trying to bypass our sandboxes. We're going to start seeing more and more techniques that bypass machine learning. We're going to talk about machine learning a little bit later today. Machine learning sounds like a great thing. AI, computers know everything. No, they don't. If you know exactly how the algorithms work, or if you have access to the algorithms and you can try and play with them, you can find ways around them. okay? You know, computer vision, how they can see your faces when you walk in the streets and the government knows everything about you. If you know how the algorithm works, you take a lipstick and you put 2 stripes on your face in the right place, the algorithm won't be able to see you anymore. No, I'm not kidding. I mean, these algorithms are very sensitive and there are ways around them. And my point is that if you are not updating your on-premise technology, if you have an on-prem, God forbid, on-premise sandbox from us or from one of our competitors, if you have any other kind of on-premise analytics software, machine learning-based software, and so on, and you don't update the software at least once a week, probably you need to do it more than once a week, then you are well behind the bad guys. Well behind the bad guys. Security needs very frequent updates. This is not firewall land anymore. This is very, very sensitive and sophisticated software that is relatively easy to bypass, and it's a cat and mouse game that we need to play with the bad guys that require very, very frequent updates. The path we're on right now is you're going to need dozens of people in your operations team to go around the infrastructure and upgrade your security technology on a daily basis. Of course, that can't continue much longer. So we already talked about a few things that I see in the industry that make us ready, or make, I believe, the industry, the cybersecurity industry, ready for a major disruption. The next thing is machine learning. And you hear more and more about machine learning. You hear it from us, you hear it from other vendors, and it's very easy to say machine learning, very easy to say AI. Most people don't understand exactly how it works, and it sounds like this great thing that's going to change the world. Maybe. There are things that machine learning can do and things that machine learning cannot do. And maybe let me give you a quick overview of what machine learning is so that we can have a more meaningful discussion about what works and what doesn't work and what are the real challenges with machine learning. So the idea behind machine learning is that traditionally, the way we programmed computers, the way we wrote software traditionally, is by telling computers what the rules are, right? So if you want to build a self-driving car, and so one way of doing it, or the traditional way of doing it, is you teach the car what to do in different scenarios, right? If the light is green, you go. If the light is yellow, you look around. If there's no cop, you go. If there is a cop, you stop, right? And if the light is red, depending on the size of your car, you either go or you stop. And the thing is that there are so many different scenarios here that it's becoming impossible for a human to sit down and predict all the scenarios and teach the machine what to do in each and every case. A better approach would be you hire hundreds of drivers, you put them in cars that have tons of sensors around them, and you let them drive and drive and drive and drive, and for some reason they're doing it in my neighborhood, and because I live close to Google. So they drive and drive, and you let the sensors record all the time what the car is seeing and what is the driver doing, and then you have so much data that you let machines try to figure out from the data what to do in different scenarios. So you collect a lot of data, and you let software figure out what the rules are. And this is what machine learning is about. Machine learning is about not providing the rules in advance to the software, but rather building software that can learn what the rules are from data. And there are different ways of doing it. There are dozens and dozens of different algorithms for machine learning. And we break them into 2.5 big categories. The first one is supervised machine learning. In supervised machine learning, you take data and you label it. So for example, you take data and say, this is good, this is bad. Or you take data and say, this data is red, this data is green, and this data is yellow. And you let the machine learn by itself what are the rules for good or bad, and what are the rules for green, red, and yellow from the rules. This is called supervised because you tell the machine what's good and what's bad, or you tell the machine what is the outcome of the learning. Then there is also, and by the way, that's your Palo Alto Network customers, or at least most of your Palo Alto Network customers, and you've been using this kind of machine learning forever. If you use our anti-malware, whether it's delivered as part of Wildfire or whether on the endpoint, we have so much malware. We have seen in the last few years hundreds of millions of pieces of malware and hundreds of millions, if not billions, of pieces of not malware, that we have enough information now to teach machines how to distinguish between malware and non-malware. right? You give it the malware, you give it the non-malware, use many different techniques, many different algorithms to go and figure out how to determine what's malware and what's malware. So that's supervised machine learning. There is also unsupervised machine learning. In unsupervised machine learning, you don't tell the machine this is good, this is bad. You give it data, and the machine has to figure out by itself patterns within the data that you give it. We'll give you an example of that in a second, so I'm not going to cover it too much. And then, of course, there is the hybrid approach, where you have a lot of data. Some of it is labeled, most of it is not labeled, and you let the machine learn how to distinguish between good and bad, yellow, green, and red, and to find patterns within the traffic. So to illustrate unsupervised machine learning, again, giving the machine a lot of information and letting the machine learn by itself information about that, I would like to invite Michael to the stage. Hey, Michael.
Thank you.
So Michael is now the smartest man in the room. Michael is one of the founders of LightCyber, which is a company we acquired not too long ago, and they are in the space of behavioral analytics. And Michael is going to tell us a little bit about unsupervised machine learning and how it's being used to stop the bad guys, or at least find them.
Thank you very much. We're very excited to be part of Palo Alto Networks and be here for Ignite for the first time. When we started off LightCyber, we realized that an attacker trying to penetrate the network needs to succeed just once. We need to stop them every single time, and they need to succeed just once. So we don't stand a chance. Even if we have 99.9 or even 99.99 security, we're still going to lose. They need to be right just once. But luckily, once the attacker is inside the network, the odds flip in our favor. Now, the attacker needs to perform hundreds and thousands of operations inside the network to actually reach the goal of the attack, and we need to catch them once, right? So now the chances are on our side. We just need to catch them. And we founded LightCyber more than 5 years ago with exactly that purpose, to catch the attackers inside the internal network much before the damage is done. What we did is assemble a group of hackers that really understand how hackers think, how they operate, and started to use the unsupervised machine learning techniques that Nir mentioned to build very detailed behavioral profiles of each and every endpoint and each and every user in the network. Why is that necessary at all? The thing that you should think about is once the attacker has compromised an endpoint in your network, they are now operating from an authorized endpoint with authorized credentials and accessing network resources. There is no rule that can identify that as bad behavior by definition. They're just doing things. They're using the network against itself. And we can't predict in advance what is the bad thing they're going to do. We need to build these very detailed behavioral profiles in order to identify the unknown, what will change, but in a way that we can identify the attack behavior. There have been many attempts in the past to do that, but these solutions would generate thousands and tens of thousands of alerts, leaving you with the impossible task of finding the one alert in the haystack of alerts, and basically making it effectively useless. With this technique of machine learning, we've been able to make it super accurate, firing just a few alerts per day, but then when you're under attack, the whole Christmas tree lights up, making it actually impossible to miss the fact that you're under attack. The great thing, now that with a vision that Mark and Nir presented, now all of this will be delivered as an app in the cloud. Just flip a switch, and you have all these analytics running for you in the cloud, and basically continuously profiling and detecting these attacks in your networks. I'd like to invite all of you to join us tomorrow for a deep dive on how to catch attackers in the internal network in the LightCyber technology. And I wish all of you a great conference.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. So machine learning is very useful in cybersecurity. We're just starting to unlock the potential of machine learning. And machine learning brings yet another challenge that makes the cybersecurity industry ready for disruption. And that challenge has to do with what we're going to see in this next movie.
Okay, that's the plan. And when we get the new hardware installed, it should reduce the surface area for attacks.
More hardware. That's good news. Before we move on, do you guys have anything for the security team?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Has there been any increased data collection? I could really use it for my analytics. The more data, the better.
Feed me more data.
Well, it's not that simple. I'll have to provision more space.
Well, isn't it just ones and zeros? I mean, we need this for the research. How much more space can it be, really?
It's not that easy. Celery has 0 calories, right? So if you kept eating celery, eventually you'd get full.
Feed me! Feed me!
Great. Now you're doing it too. Let me explain, okay? The first thing...
Feed me! 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 Feed me!
I'm sure all of you have the employees that tell you that behave like this. So we do. Here's the thing about machine learning. It needs data. It needs a lot of data. And I know a lot of you today are collecting data from your networks, from your endpoints, from SaaS applications, from servers, from applications, and so on. It's not enough. If you're not collecting tens of terabytes of data per day, then you're probably not collecting enough. For example, the most important piece of data that you need to collect for any kind of machine learning-based analytics to work is data about all the allowed traffic to your infrastructure. Whereas typically, when I talk to customers, they tell me that they focus on collecting the deny logs, the alert logs, the threat logs, the blocked URLs, and so on logs, errors from applications, error from servers, key events on endpoints, and so on. That data is not very useful for machine learning. If you blocked something, what are you going to learn? That you blocked it? You learn based on what you actually allowed. And in order for machine learning to work, in order for any of the machine learning-based analytics or other things to work, we need to see everything that happens in the infrastructure. We need to log everything. Every connection that your firewall allows, every connection that your internal firewalls allow, any connection inside your data center, east to west, any activity on the endpoint, anything that happens with any of your SaaS applications need to be logged. And that, of course, is a big challenge, mostly because it's very difficult to deal with so much information, and it's very expensive to deal with so much information. It's very expensive because most of the tools that you use to collect that information are super expensive, and because maintaining the infrastructure for collecting this amount of information is very, very difficult. Okay? Today, if you want to collect a few tens of terabytes per day, maintain about a petabyte of data so that machine learning can work over time, and when new machine learning-based models come out, you can go back in time, at least call it 3 months, and look at what happened in the last 3 months and relearn, so you don't have to wait another 3 months for it to work and to see if it works or not. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars of spend just for the infrastructure. And of course, that cannot happen. You're not going to spend tens of millions of dollars each in order to maintain the infrastructure today and the software that's required to collect tens of terabytes per day and maintain 3 months of collection, okay? On top of that, the amount of compute that's required to process all that data is unbelievably large. Again, it even adds to the complexity of what you're trying to do, and I'm sure that many of you today have SIEMs, and many of you tried to add maybe some analytics packages to the SIEMs, and you found out that the infrastructure you have today, you have to multiply it by 10 in terms of number of cores and memory in order to do basic analytics. And if machine learning is the future, and if processing huge amount of data is the future, if you agree with that, then we need to do something about it. We're just on the wrong track right now, on the wrong course right now. And then, on top of that, there is this issue where machine learning, in some cases, is much better when you do it across multiple organizations. Here's the trick. If you look at what Michael talked about, behavior analytics, if I just look at your organization and I want to do behavior analytics, I would assume that the bad guys are the anomaly, right? The adversary is the anomaly, and what I see is normal, which is a good assumption, and that's the way, in general, behavior analytics works. It tries to find out what's normal in your organization and find the abnormal, the bad guy. When you look across multiple organizations, it turns. If you look across multiple organizations and you assume that there is an adversary that's trying to breach those different organizations, that adversary is becoming the common, and those different organizations being different become the anomaly or the different thing. So my point is that we're seeing a future where more and more machine learning-based techniques are going to work really well across multiple organizations. I'm not sure our industry is ready for that. How we're going to take your data and everyone else's data here and look at it together and run machine learning algorithms on it. That's a challenge. So as an entrepreneur, when I look at the amount of spend that we're spending on security, R&D, and investment in new startups and the number of startups and so on, which is on an unsustainable path. And I look at the fact that it's becoming impossible for organizations like yours to consume cybersecurity because they try and buy system is broken because it costs a lot of money to figure out whether something works or doesn't work in your infrastructure. And when I see that the technology that's coming out of the market, some of which you're using today already and some of which you're going to start consuming in the near future, requires very, very frequent updates that your typical operations team cannot deal with. And then when I look at all the requirements that machine learning is going to bring to the market, the need for huge amount of storage, huge amount of compute, and also centralization so that we can look at many organizations at the same time, I tell to myself, okay, this industry is ready for disruption. The cybersecurity industry is ready for disruption. And now that it's ready for disruption, let's spend the next few months figuring out what the disruption is. Now, luckily, those 3 months or those few months have already lapsed because we figured out that the market is ready for disruption some time ago. And what I want to walk you through right now is what we believe the disruption is. So looking at all these different things that I talked about, all the different things that just don't work, to me, there is one conclusion. And that one conclusion is that cybersecurity has to become a set of services that you consume rather than a set of technologies that you deploy on premise, okay? Cybersecurity needs to start be delivered as SaaS. The 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 cybersecurity technologies that you're using today in your infrastructure have to turn into 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 services that you buy that require nothing to be deployed in your infrastructure in order to consume. And that's a little bit tricky because unlike other SaaS services, unlike ERP and CRM and Salesforce management and Office and email in the cloud and so on, cybersecurity needs a little bit more than a browser. Cybersecurity needs agents in the infrastructure. Cybersecurity needs agents in the network. Cybersecurity needs agents on endpoints. Cybersecurity needs agents looking at SaaS applications such that those agents can execute instructions to stop the bad things, and those agents can collect information into a centralized location where all the different things that we do in order to figure out whether there's something bad or not in your infrastructure can run. So the future that we see is a future where you have a set of technologies, network technologies, physical and virtual, on-premise, co-located, and in the cloud. You have endpoint technology, a single endpoint agent, and a single process looking at your SaaS applications that do exactly that. They enforce policies, they look for bad things and stop them, and collect information into a centralized threat intelligence cloud where the bad things are discovered within that data. And that's it. Once you have your single network agent in each location, physical or virtual in your infrastructure, let's call that agent a firewall. And once you have your agent on an endpoint, let's call this a next generation endpoint protection or whatever. And once you have the agent looking at your SaaS applications, let's call it, I don't know, Aperture or something like that, you're all set. Everything you buy from that point is a service. And that magically fixes all the challenges that I talked about before. How do you try something new? You turn it on. Immediately, it runs on your entire infrastructure. If it works, great, you start paying for it. If it doesn't, you try the next one, okay? You don't have to deploy anything on premise in terms of data collection. You don't have to upgrade anything. We take care of the services are being updated whenever needed, on a daily, weekly, whatever basis. You don't have to update anything in order to combat the latest evasion technique from the bad guys. And if you're an entrepreneur and you want to start a company that's delivering this best ever algorithm that you just came out with, you don't need to raise tens of millions of dollars and hire 50 engineers in order to build products that then you, as customers, are expected to deploy them in the network and on endpoints and looking at SaaS applications. You just hire two of your best friends from college, and you sit in a garage for a few months, and you come up with the algorithm, you run it in the cloud on all the data that's already being collected, and you deliver value, or you don't. And if you do, then thousands of customers are ready to buy your algorithm and pay for it because it provides value, okay? It really fixes everything, and this is the world we're seeing. It's a world where there is a layer that acts as agents, again, firewalls, endpoint, SaaS, and a massive data collection scheme, which is very, very attractively priced, such that you can collect tens of terabytes of data per day, such that you can keep petabytes of data online for all these different algorithms to run and not, break the bank. And then on top of that, there is a set of applications Applications delivered by Palo Alto Networks, such as Wildfire and Autofocus and Lightcyber and other things that you might hear about today. And then there are many applications that are provided by third parties. Any large vendor or small vendor or 3 guys that just finished MIT that want to build something for it are welcome to build. Our competitors are welcome to build for it. Actually, I want to get to a point where you don't have to buy any of these services from Palo Alto Networks, meaning if you don't like Wildfire, there should be many other sandbox vendors there. And if you don't like our URL filtering service, there need to be other URL filtering vendors there that provide you maybe better service than us. And if you don't like our behavior analytics, or maybe you like ours, but someone else's complements that, buy it from them. All our competitors are invited to participate in this and build applications and try to show value with these applications. And if you buy the applications, you buy the applications. If you don't buy the applications, you don't buy the applications. Very quickly, we'll know what works and what doesn't work. This is the disruption I talked about. We are going to completely change the way you consume cybersecurity. No more deploying products on premise, either physically or virtually, either really on premise or in the cloud. You just deploy one thing in the network, the firewall, physical or virtual, on premise, co-located, or in the cloud. One thing on an endpoint. One service that looks at all your SaaS applications. Everything else from that point comes as a service. And maybe a little bit more technical details about how all of that actually works inside the data center. When we collect the data from you, there are some processes that are running inline on the data. Usually when you want to do machine learning, when data comes in, you want to compare that to machine learning. Algorithms, models, and see if it's good or bad. When data comes in, you want to update your machine learning algorithms. And then, OK, something is blinking here. I saw it. Thank you. They sent a message to me. Sorry. It's confusing. So when data comes in, you update things. And usually machine learning models, you compare the machine learning models, you update machine learning models. Maybe you do inline alertings and so on. And then we take all the data that comes in and push it into Elasticsearch, which is a real-time query system, We push it into Hadoop, which is a batch processing system, where it can stay for the next, I don't care how long, petabytes of data, such that when there is a new machine learning algorithm, it can go back in time and learn very quickly, and then start being productive right away, and you don't have to wait 3 weeks or 3 months until it becomes productive. There is SQL database, there is HBase, which is a pair key value base for applications to store data in, and all the latest buzzwords are available in that infrastructure, such that any application developer doesn't have to work on anything that is not cybersecurity proper related. Just run your queries, build your GUI, and deliver your value. What kind of applications can run here? For example, visualization applications. There's so much data here that you can visualize it. Maybe for reporting, maybe for hunting, or for other reasons. You can bring in a threat intelligence feed and compare all the data to that feed to provide much more value through that feed. You can, of course, run the latest and greatest machine learning-based detection to detect bad things. And once you detect bad things, there are going to be APIs that allow you to then, of course, everything with permission, control the network, the endpoint, and the SaaS agents such that you can actually take action and stop attacks. The sky is limitless. Lee Klarich, who's going to follow me after the break, is going to give you more examples of applications that can run in this environment. Again, the most important thing is you don't have to deploy anything. You flip a switch, you try the application. If it works, you pay for it. If it doesn't work, you move on to the next one. That's it. This is the way cybersecurity is going to be consumed from now on. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you're ready for the next disruption in cybersecurity.